Bhagavate Shri Arunachala Ramanaya Namaskaram. Today I'm going to be talking about uh, the greatness of the thought of Arunachala. Um, uh, in Sanskrit, there's a sloka which is very well known in South India. Darshana Dabrat Sadasi Janana Kamalalaye Kasyantu Marana Mukti Smarana Arunachalam. That means Janana Darshana Aprasadasi, from seeing Aprasadasi, that's Chidambaram. Janana Kamalalaya, by being born in Kamalalaya, that is Tiruvaro. Kasyantu Marana, by death in Kasi, that is Varanasi or Benares. Mukti smaranat Arunachalam, by mere thought of Arunachala, by mere remembrance of Arunachala, mukti is assured. That is, we will get mukti if we see Chidambaram, if we are born in Tiruvaro, if we die in Kasi, or merely think of Arunachala. The mere thought of Arunachala is so powerful. This truth has been expressed and explained by Bhagavan in his poetry, and he lived. That is, it was Bhagavan's experience. There is a verse that Bhagavan once wrote beneath a picture of Arunachala. And he later wrote it under so many pictures of Arunachala, both pictures that he drew and photographs of Arunachala. And it's also in Bhagavan's Ramana Maharshi, collective works in Tamil. It's under the photograph of Arunachala. The verse is Karuna Navamai Karuna Katinal Arunachala Shivamitam. That means this is Karuna Navamai, that is being the ocean of grace, of compassion. Karuda, when thought of, Gati Nalhu, giving liberation, this is Arunachala Shiva. So this is Arunachala Shiva, which, being the ocean of compassion, gives liberation when thought of. That's a very, very beautiful verse. And then there's also among the 7 verses that Bhagavan composed based on verses from the Arunachala Mahatmyam, from the Skanda Purana and the Shiva Rahasya. There's one verse that also expresses this idea. Uruterielle Utukannutral. By seeing by seeing its form from wherever the form is visible, within the area where the form is visible. So seeing it, Karidinal Dura Karutila Lumbe, or by thinking of it by mind from afar. Wherever you may be, you can think of it from afar. Varuta Marada Varada Vedanta Atum Vijnanam, that is the Vijnana, the true knowledge that that is the import of Vedanta, which cannot be achieved without great difficulty. Arkum undame, it will arise for everyone. It will come to everyone by seeing this hill from afar. I mean, seeing this hill from wherever it's visible, within the range of the limits of its visibility, by seeing it, or by thinking of it from afar. This import of Vedanta, the true knowledge by Vijnana, will be achieved. So Bhagavan has expressed this in there's so many verses. In Ashrama, he says the very first verse, Arunachala mena ahame nine pava ahate vera rupai Arunachala. Arunachala, you eradicate the ego of those who think of you in the heart. And there's a double meaning there, because ahame means both in the heart, and it also means I, only I. So it also means those who think of Arunachala as I in the heart. It's got both meanings. Because when Bhagavan is throughout Stuti Panchakam, the verses we can be understood at different levels. That is, Bhagavan is clearly praising the external form of Arunachala. Arunachala is a hill, but he's also repeatedly saying Arunachala is shining in the heart. So the true form of Arunachala, that is Arunachala Swarupa, is Atma Swarupa, the real nature of ourself. But the real nature of ourself has appeared outwardly in the form of Arunachala in order to turn us back within. As Bhagavan says, when after praying to Arunachala, Tane, Tane, Tattvamidane, Tane Katavai Arunachala, oneself alone is the reality. Reveal this to me, show me this yourself, Arunachala. Then in the next verse, he says what Arunachala taught him: Tirambiyaham, turning within. Tane dinamaha kankan, see yourself daily with the inner eye, that is the eye of attention. Terium, it will be known. Endrane, you said, en Arunachala, my Arunachala. Well, an Arunachala can mean what? Arunachala, what? It can be an expression of, en can be an expression of wonder. It can also mean my Arunachala, expressing the intimacy Bhagavan has with Arunachala. So we always need to see that in Ashrama, there's the different levels of meaning. There's the more surface meaning, and there's the deeper meaning. Both are correct meaning. Both are perfectly valid. That is, these verses are intended to be understood at different levels, because when Bhagavan talks of the thought of Arunachala, he's talking both about the thought of the external form of Arunachala and the internal form of Arunachala as I. And there's so many verses where he talks about how where he indicates that in his life what the effect that the thought of Arunachala had on him. For example, in verse 70, Payanina tideve pidi tirutaneyun perumaya ariva Arunachala. The very moment I thought of your name, perumaya ariva, sorry, I'm just trying to remember. Yes, you caught hold of me and pulled me to you. Perumaya ariva, who can know your greatness? And then in verse 103, oh no, sorry, verse 102, Arune and Dranayan. As soon as I thought of Arunachala, Arulkani Patenon, you caught me in the net of your grace. Un Arul Vale Tapumo, can the trap of your grace ever fail? And then in the next verse, because when he talks about a net and a trap, it suggests a spider. In the next verse, he says, Chindit, that is, we think of Arunachala, he thinks of us. So this is about Arunachala thinking of us. Chindit taropada chilandi pokati chirayit tundrane Arunachala. Chindit taropada chilandi pol, that is like a spider resolving like a spider resolves to catch its prey. You thinking like that, you caught me, and made me a prisoner. But the verses I want to talk about particularly today are a sequence of 4 verses, the last 2 verses of Arunachala Patikam and the first 2 verses of Arunachala Ashtakam. These were composed on consecutive days. That is, Bhagavan was composing 1 verse a day. And as soon, so these were 4 verses were composed on 4 consecutive days, and there's a clear sequence of ideas, flow of ideas through them. So verse 10 of Arunachala Patikam is an extremely important verse, because this is the verse in which Bhagavan explains how this thought of Arunachala, how it works in the mind and bestows upon us mukti. What he says in this verse is, in the first sentence is, Patanum Pudumai Veer Vali Kanta Parvatam. Patanum Pudumai. I have seen, Pudumai means, literally it means newness or freshness, but it means a wonder, something extraordinary or miraculous. So I've seen a wonder, something extraordinary and miraculous. What is that wonder? Veer Vali Kanta Parvatam. Kanta Parvatam is the magnet hill, the magnetic hill. Veer Vali, that forcibly seizes the soul. So I have seen something extraordinary and miraculous, this magnetic hill that forcibly seizes the soul. So just like a magnet will seize any iron that comes close to it, this hill seizes the soul and draws it near to it. Then in the next verse, his next sentence, he says, this is a very important sentence, because this is where he explains what happens. Orutanam idane ortidum virin setteye oduki orutanadu abimukamaha itu ade tambol achalma chedu if inui bali kolum. Sorry, av inui bali kolum. So what that means is, Orutarum idane ortidum virin sheshteye oduki means subduing the mischievous activity of the soul who thinks of it once. Orudarum means once. So even one thought of Arunachala is sufficient. Idane means this, it's referring to Arunachala. Ortidum, who thinks of, virin, of the soul, Cheshteye is a Tamil form of in Tamil it's Shette, but it's a Tamil form of the Sanskrit word Sheshte, which means activity, movement, activity, action, or exertion. But in Tamil, it particularly means mischievous activity. Subduing the mischievous activity of the soul who thinks of it once. What is that mischievous activity? It's the activity of the mind. The mind is always going outwards, seeking happiness in this or that. That is the mischievous activity. That mischievous activity of the mind is what is drawing us away from Arunachala, who's ever shining in our heart. And then in the next sentence, then that's the first clause. That is, there's a series of adverbial clauses. So the first clause is subduing the mischievous activity of the soul who thinks of it once. Oru tanadu abimukamaha ietu. Pulling to be facing towards itself. Oru means one. Oru is an adjective that means one. Tanadu means is a genitive or 6-case form of a generic pronoun tan, which can mean oneself or in this context itself. And abhimukham is a Sanskrit word that means facing towards. So Tanadu abhimukh, and this abhimukham, it can be used with the accusative, dative, genitive, or locative cases. In this case, Bhagavan uses it with the genitive case. So though Tanadu means of itself or its own, it's understood here as the object of facing towards. What is facing towards? So facing towards itself. Aha, to be, irtu, pulling. Irtu means pulling, dragging, attracting. It implies forcibly pulling. It's this. It also means drawing towards or carrying away. So pulling to be facing towards itself. But there's this adjective one towards itself, a one. But oru means one. It means single. It means unique. It means peerless. It means special. So the implication is that Arunachala is the one. Though it's an adjective, it's not a noun, but the implication is pulling that soul to be facing towards itself for one, meaning the one reality that shines in the heart as Satchit, pure being awareness, I am. And then in the next clause, the third adverbial clause, ade tambol achalamar chedu. That means making it to be motionless like itself. And then finally, in the main clause, av inuir bali kolum. It takes that sweet soul as bali. Bali means, bali is the, it means a sacrificial offering. In the Vedic sacrifices, in yagas and yajnas, what is offered into the fire is bali. It also, in later times, it came to mean the food that is offered to God in worship, whether in temples or at home. When you make any offering to God, that is bali. It also means the food that is offered as alms to mendicants. So Arunachala takes that sweet soul as bali. The implication is that the sweet soul, why is it sweet? Because it's spiritually ripened and pure. So only when it's spiritually ripened and pure, will it be drawn within to face Arunachala itself and thereby be made motionless? So the implication is it takes and consumes that sweet, spiritually ripened and pure soul as bali, food offered in sacrifice or alms. So the whole of this second sentence is, the meaning of the whole sentence is, subduing the mischievous activity of a soul who thinks of it once, pulling to be facing towards its unique self, making it to be motionless like itself, it takes that sweet soul as bali. The implication is, if we slightly expand it, bringing in the implication, subduing the mischievous, outward-going mental activity of a soul who thinks of it once, pulling, dragging, or attracting that soul to be facing towards itself, the one reality that shines in the heart as Satchit, pure being awareness, I am, thereby making it achala, motionless like itself. It takes and consumes that sweet, spiritually ripened, pure soul as bali, as sacrificial offering, as food offered in sacrifice, in worship. So in this sentence, Bhagavan explains how Arunachala bestows mukti by on those who merely think of it. That is, but if we merely think of Arunachala, it will work within our heart to slowly subdue the outward-going activity of the mind. It will pull us within to face itself. It's ever shining in the heart as I, the one reality that's ever shining in my heart as I am, the pure Satchit, being awareness, and thereby it will make it motionless like itself. Like itself, Tambol can also mean as itself. Make it motionless as itself, and thus it will take and consume that sweet, spiritually ripened pure soul. When he says it will take as Bali, it's reminiscent of verse 21 of Ulutu Napadu, where he ends by saying, Unadal Khan, becoming food is seeing. That is, in order to see our real nature or to see God, we must become food. We must be swallowed. We must be absorbed in him. We must lose ourselves completely in him, cease to exist as a separate entity. And then the next sentence is ikten. Iktu means this, en means what. So it literally means this is what. It implies what a wonder this is. What is often used in the sense of what a wonder. It's an exclamation. So what a wonder is this? That is this working of Arunachala, this Aral sail, that action of Arunachala's grace is such a wonderful, extraordinary thing. That's why he says, Patanum Pudumaya, I've seen something wonderful, extraordinary. You can just feel that in Bhagavan's words, every word you can feel the intense love that he has for Arunachala. Then the next sentence is, the final sentence, Otumin Wiakal Ulamadil Oliriv Wiakoli Arunama Giriye. That means Wiakal is addressing us all. It's a vocative plural form of Wea. Wea means soul, so he's addressing us all, souls. Because he said earlier, the soul who thinks of it even once. So he's addressing all of us as souls. Souls. Wea min. Wea min means be saved. It's a plural imperative. Be saved. How to be saved? Ought to. Ought to means thinking. Thinking of what? Ulumadil Oliriv Wiekoli Arunamagiriye. This great Aruna hill, Arunamagiriye, if Wiekoli, this killer of the soul, Ulamadil Oliriv, who shines in the heart. So what this sentence implies is souls be saved by thinking of the great Aruna hill, this killer of the soul, who shines in the heart. Who shines in the heart means he shines in the heart, namely as Satchit, the fundamental awareness of being, I am. That is what is shining in the heart of each one of us as our fundamental awareness of our own being, I am. That is Satchit. That is the heart, that is Arunachala, that is the killer of the soul. That is, if we turn within, he will devour us. So he's the killer of the soul. So in this verse, Bhagavan explains how this thought of Arunachala, how by thinking of the outward form of Arunachala, it will draw us within to make us tanadu abhimukam, to facing towards itself. That implies towards itself in the heart. Tanadu means both itself and ourself, because it is ourself. And then in the next verse, he boldly proclaims, or he emphatically proclaims his own experience. Giridu Parama Karudiel Thembol Ketavaretane Kolo. That means, like me, Empol, Giridu Parama, who think this hill to be the supreme. Like me, who think the hill to be supreme, Ketava Etane Kolo. How many are there who have been ruined? Ketava means who have been ruined. It implies who've been destroyed. In other words, whose ego has been eradicated. Arunachal Mina Hamainini Pava Ate Vera Rupai Arunachal. It eradicates the ego. So it's um, how many of those like me who have been destroyed by thinking this hill to be the supreme. In other words, whose ego has been eradicated merely by thinking this hill to be the supreme. This is the tattva of Arunachala. Arunachala appeared as a column of fire for one purpose and one purpose alone, for crushing the ego, as in the Puranic story of the origin of Arunachala. So as Bhagavan says in one of the verses in Ashrama, Kodi Tadeyeri Kollune Kati Kondeng Varven Arunachala. Kodiyitu means raising a flag. That is, if you're going to do some charitable deed, like feeding people or something, you raise a flag to announce your charity. Like that, Arunachala has raised a flag to announce the charity he is doing. What is the charity he does? Kodiyit itu adiare kollune katti. That you to announce yourself as the killer of your devotees. Kondeng and Varven, having embraced you, who announced yourself as who proclaimed yourself as the killer of your devotees, how can I survive? So, like me, who think this hill to be the supreme, how many of those who have thereby been destroyed? Giriyadu, these are such beautiful words. Giriyadu parama karadiya vembol hetava retane kollo. Then the next sentence, viritural pire penil virevu vitu udul vitida viradu karudio tirivir. Tirivir is a vocative. He's addressing people. Karutinul orukal karudida kolamale kollum oru aru marandu ondru undu avenio. What that means is, oh, people who are wandering about thinking of a means to give up the body, having given up desire for this defective life due to its expanding or unfolding misery, there is on earth one rare medicine that, when thought of once within the mind, will kill without killing. Will kill without killing means it will kill ego without killing us. That is, what we actually are will not be killed. What we actually are can never be killed. But what we now seem to be, this rising I, this ego, that will be decimated, completely killed by. So this is the Bhagavan is proclaiming Arunachala as the great medicine that will it won't kill the body. It won't kill the because that is when the misery of this life is so intense, we want to give up the body. But giving up the body is not a solution, because so long as ego remains, ego will continue projecting one body after another. So merely giving up the body is not sufficient. So we want something that will kill ego. So kolame kolum, we'll kill without killing. It can mean we'll kill ego without killing us. That's the deeper meaning. The more superficial meaning, it will kill the ego without killing the body. That is, the body will live according to its prarabdha, but the one who takes that body to be I, the I that rises as I am this body, I am this person, that will be killed. So what is this great medicine? What is this medicine on earth? But merely thinking of which will kill without killing. Adutan arunamadiram ena arivir. Know that it certainly is Aruna hill. Adutan, that itself, arunamadiram, Aruna hill, ena arivir. Know that it is certainly this Aruna hill. So here he's talking about his own experience. He says, like me, how many have been killed? So in the next verse, the first verse of Ashtakam, he goes on to talk more about his own. That is, there's a touch of autobiography in that last verse of Patikam. That autobiographical theme is continuing in the next verse and in the next two verses, the first two verses of Ashtakam. What he says in this verse 1 of Ashtakam, in the first sentence, he says, Ari Varu Giri Ena Amataram. That means it is seated as if a hill bereft of awareness. Amataram means it is seated, it remains, it abides. Ena means as, but in this context it means as if. Ari Varu Giri. Ari Varu means a hill without awareness, without knowledge, bereft of awareness. So it seems to be a hill bereft of awareness. But then what he says in the next sentence is, Amma. Amma is an expression of wonder. Adisayam, Eden Sail, Arivari Darkum. Its action is preeminent, extraordinary, or wonderful, difficult for anyone to know. Aridu Arkum means for anyone or for everyone. Varidu means it's difficult to know, difficult to understand or recognize. The action he's talking about here, sail, is aral sail, the action of grace. So though it seems to be an insentient hill, its action of grace is something extraordinary, wonderful, preeminent, that cannot be, that it's difficult for anyone to know it, to understand it, to recognize it, to comprehend it. And then he goes on to talk about his own experience. In the next sentence, he says, Ari Varu Siru Vayadu, Adu Mudal Aruna, Miha Peridu Ena, Ari Vinilanga, Ari Hilan, Adum Porul, Adu Tiruvannamalai Ena, Oru Varal, Ari Vura Petram. So what that means is, I'll go clause by clause, Ari Varu, the same, he used the word Arivaru at the beginning of the first line, referring to Arunachala. It seems to be an insentient hill. So Arivaru means devoid of awareness, devoid of knowledge. In this case, it doesn't mean devoid of awareness, it means devoid of knowledge. Arivaru Siru Vayadu. Siru Vayadu means tender age, the young age, when he was very small. Adu Mudal, from that tender age, from that young age, when he was bereft of knowledge. That implies from my young age, when I was bereft of knowledge of anything else. That means he didn't know anything else, but he did know one thing. What did that one thing he knew? Arunachalam Miha Peridu Ena Arivinilanga. That means though Arunachala shone in awareness as what is exceedingly great, what that implies, awareness here is implying the mind. So what this implies is, though Arunachala shone in my awareness or in my mind as what is exceedingly great, Peridu means what is great. Miha Peridu, Miha is an adverb. It's actually the infinitive of the verb mihu, which means to exceed or surpass or be great or excellent or superior. But often in Tamil, the infinitive of verbs are often used adverbially as adverbs. So here it means abundantly, greatly, extremely, exceedingly. So it's exceedingly great. And Ilanga means it shone, but Ilanga means to shine or be bright. So it implies it shone brightly. Um, uh, uh, um, so it was very, very clearly Arunachala was shining in his mind as what is exceedingly great. In some biographies of Bhagavan, they say that Bhagavan had a vague idea about Arunachala, but we can see from this line, this isn't anything vague. When he uses the word Ilanga, it clearly means it was shining brightly, clearly. So there wasn't any doubt before Bhagavan knew any other thing, but one thing that was shining in his mind as what is exceedingly great, what the ultimate reality is Arunachalam. So that knowledge that Arunachala is something exceedingly great was shining in his mind before he knew any other thing. Late in his childhood, he came to know that verse, Darshana Dabrasadasi Janana Kamalaya Kasyantu Marana Mukti Smaranat Arunachalam. He came to know that later, but even before he knew about that. Arunachala was shining in his mind as something that's exceedingly great. That's what he knew. Arunachala is the ultimate reality. So one day when he was a young boy, a relative returned from some pilgrimage, and so he asked that relative, "Where have you come from?" And that relative replied, "I've come from Arunachala." That was a great a thrill for Bhagavan when he said, "I've come from Arunachala." So you can actually come from Arunachala. Arunachala is actually a place you can come from. So he said, "What? You've come from Arunachala? Where's Arunachala?" And that relative said, "Don't you know it's Tiruvannamalai?" Of course, Bhagavan knew about Tiruvannamalai, but it's a very holy place. It's been worshipped by all the great Shaiva saints. But so what he says in the next clause is, Ari Arihilan Adon Porol. That means I did not know its Porol. Porol is a word that is very difficult to translate into English. There's no adequate word. It means substance, essence, reality, or what a thing actually is. Um, uh, um, so he didn't know what it actually is. Um, when didn't he know what it actually is? Adu Tiruvannamalai enna Arivaral Arivurapetram. That means even having got to know from someone that it is Tiruvannamalai. So the whole sentence is Arivari Siruvayadu Adu Mudal Arunachala Mihaperidu Ena Arivinilanga Arihilan Adum Porul Adu Tiruvannamalai Ena Oruvaral Arivurapetram. That means though from the young age of bereft of knowledge, Arunachala shone in awareness as what is exceedingly great. Even having got to know from someone that it is Tiruvannamalai, I did not know its Porol. I did not know what it actually is. I didn't actually realize it, that is experience what it actually is. What it actually is, obviously, it's our own real nature. But at that time, he didn't come to know that. So if we slightly expand the implication of this sentence, though from my young age, when I was bereft of knowledge of anything else, Arunachala shone in my awareness or mind as what is exceedingly great. Even after getting to know from someone that it is Tiruvannamalai, I did not know, understand, or recognize its porol, its substance, essence, reality, or what it actually is. And then the last sentence is very, very significant sentence. um, Ari Vinay Marul Urutu Aruhil Eka Aruhuram Amayam Idu Achalama Kandain. What that means is um, the first part of that is Arivine Marulurtu Aruhil Eka. Uh, Arivine is again it's an accusative case form of Arivu, which means awareness, but in this context it implies mind. Marulurutu means Marul means bewilderment, delusion. That's the usual meaning of Maru, but it also means wonder. It also means possession, as by a spirit or deity, or enchantment. Urutu means gaining or acquiring or undergoing or experiencing. So Arivene Marulurtu means enchanting the mind or possessing the mind. Like that is like a divine possession. Well, not like it was a divine possession, being possessed by a divine being. Aruhinil Eka. Eka means pulling or pulling or drawing or carrying away or pulling towards itself. Aruhinil means close. So the meaning of this first clause, when enchanting the mind, it pulled close. That implies when enchanting or possessing my mind, it pulled me close. Then what happened? Aruhurum amayam idu achalamakandein. Aruhurum means uh, coming close or reaching close to it. Amayam means Amayam is a Tamil form of the Sanskrit word samayam. So it means an appointed time, a proper or opportune moment. So at the opportune moment of coming close, Achalama Akandain, I saw it to be Achalam. Achalam means this is the same word Bhagavan used in verse 10 of Patikam, which we discussed earlier. That is when it makes the soul motionless like itself. So he says he saw it to be Achalam. Achalam means motionless, still, steady. It can also mean a mountain. That's where the name Arunachalam comes from, because the name of the hill is Aruna. Achalam means it's a hill. It's a hill is called, or a hill or mountain is called Achalam because it's steady, it's immovable, it's motionless. So this sentence, when enchanting the mind, it pulled close. At the appointed time of coming close, I saw this as Achalam. The surface meaning, the superficial meaning is when pulling Bhagavan close to it, when enchanting his mind, possessing his mind, it pulled him to him. And at the appointed time, that's on the Bhagavan's Advent day, the day that he reached Tiruvannamalai, that appointed time when he came close to it, he saw it to be a hill. That is the surface meaning, but it's actually got a deeper meaning. Because what happened in Bhagavan's Advent when he came to Tiruvannamalai is the inner significance of that is what had happened 6 weeks earlier in Madurai. That is, Bhagavan's true advent, his true homecoming, wasn't just, that was expressed on a physical level on the 1st of September when he when he physically came to Arunachala. But that what was expressed physically on that day had actually happened spiritually 6 weeks earlier. And I think, of course, we can understand, as I said earlier, these verses of Stuti Panchakam we can understand on different levels. They're intended to be interpreted on different levels. So the surface interpretation is talking about the samayam, the amayam, the appointed time, the appropriate time, the opportune time was the time that he came to Tiruvannamalai and he saw it to be a hill. That's the surface meaning. The deeper meaning is it's important to note here the words he uses here are very some of them are the same words that he used in that sentence in the main sentence in verse 10 of Patikam, where he talks about Arunachala stilling the or subduing the mischievous activity of the soul who thinks of it even once, drawing it to face towards itself. For one, that implies drawing it inwards to face itself. So the word he used for drawing or pulling there was irtu. Here he uses irka. Irka is another form of the same verb. It's the same pulling. And there he said, achalama chedu, making motionless. Tambol achalama, making motionless like itself. Here he says the same achalama kandane. So achalama means as achala or to be achala. So the deeper meaning of this is when enchanting his mind and pulling him close, that means it pulled him within. That is on that day in Madurai, when that fear of death arose in him. That was the opportune time when Arunachala had already enchanted his mind, but he fully possessed him at that moment and pulled him close back into the heart. And at that appointed time, when he entered the heart, he saw it to be Achalam. He saw that Arunachala is that motionless being, but is ever shining in our heart as I am. And of course, if it's a matter of seeing it to be a hill, there's a seer and something seen. That is all knowledge of things other than ourselves is tripartite. There's a knower, there's the thing that is known, and there's the means by which it is known. That is the knower is called pramata. What is known is called prameya, and the means by which it is known is called pramana. So that is about knowing anything other than ourselves. But to know ourselves, there's no such three factors involved, because as Bhagavan says in verse 26 of Upadesha Undya, Tanai iritale, tanai aridalam. Being oneself alone is knowing oneself. That is, it's not a matter of, because oneself is not two. So they're not two things, one to know another. So we can know ourselves only by being ourselves. We can see what is Achala only by being Achala, is the implication. So when he said, I saw it, Achala Makandane, it implies I saw it to be Achala. But it also has another implication, Achala Ma Kandane. As motionlessness, I saw it. That is, I myself became that motionlessness, and thus I saw it as myself, is the implication. So there are two ways of interpreting this last line of this verse. Both are appropriate, but the problem if we take it to be talking about the Bhagavan's physically being brought to Arunachala, there's a slight discontinuity between this line and the first line of the next verse, in which he talks about investigating who is the seer. In the early days, many devotees thought, after Bhagavan composed this ashtakam, but Bhagavan's realization was complete only after he came to Arunachala, saw Arunachala standing as a hill. He then investigated who is the seer, and he saw what remained when the seer ceased to exist. So many people thought what happened in Madurai was some sort of a stimulus, but it was what started in Madurai was completed in Tiruvannamalai. Natyananda, who came to Bhagavan in 1918, he told me when he came to Bhagavan and read this, he, like most other people, he took it to mean the Bhagavan is indicating here, but he attained the full realization only after coming to Tiruvannamalai. Natyananda told me that was his impression for some years until he heard Bhagavan saying very explicitly that was not the case. One way Bhagavan often used to express it is, the sun that rose in Madurai, the same sun is shining here in Tiruvannamalai. It hasn't changed at all. That means the sun of Jnana, that arose in all its fullness and glory in Madurai, has not diminished at all. It has remained the same ever since. So Bhagavan made it very, very clear what happened that day in Madurai. That was the final ahate verarupa. It was a complete decimation of ego. So if we take the deeper meaning of this, that what Bhagavan is referring, the amayam, the samayam that Bhagavan is referring to here, is not just his physically coming to Tiruvannamalai, but the opportune time when he was drawn close to Arunachala in the heart, it fits in perfectly with the next verse. So what he says in the next verse, I've only got 5 or 6 minutes, so I have to be quick. This is also a very, very important verse, because here Bhagavan is talking about, in verse 10 of Patikam, he indicated that by thinking of the outward form of Arunachala, Arunachala will thereby subdue the outward going activity of the mind, draw that soul within to face itself, the one, the supreme, and thereby it will make it motionless like itself and feed upon it. That is the implication in that verse. So now in this verse 1 of Ashtakam, he was talking about that thought of Arunachala was shining in his mind from the very earliest time, before he knew anything else. So that at the opportune time, it pulled his mind within, and he saw it to be achala, to be motionlessness. So then if we take it in that sense, then this verse, he's in the first sentence of the first line of this verse, he's expanding on what actually happens when Arunachala draws us close. That is, the self-investigation takes place. That is, our mind is pulled back and fixed in Arunachala, who is shining in our heart desire. And that is Atma Vichara. As Bhagavan says in Nana, in the 7th, Bhagavan defines what Atma Vichara is: Sadakalamum manate atmavil vaitirvatu. So keeping the mind always on oneself, keeping the mind always in oneself, in the heart. So that is what happens when Arunachala pulls us within. So what he says in this verse is, in the first line, he says, Kandavan evan ena karutinul nada, Kandavan indrida nindradu kande. This is very, very beautifully expressed. Kandavan evan ena karutinul nada. When investigating within the mind, who is the seer? That is, Bhagavan uses, Tamil is a very beautiful language, because it's possible to say things. In English, if we want to talk about an action without saying who is the actor, we have to use the passive form. For example, we can say, the door was closed. we're not saying who has closed the door, but the door was closed. Someone has closed it, but we don't know who. But in Tamil, you can say that in a sort of active voice, but actually it's correctly speaking, it's a middle voice. It's neither active nor passive. It's active in form, but it's equivalent to what we in English would call passive because there's no subject there. So all he says is, when investigating within the mind, who is the seer? He doesn't say who is to investigate. Obviously, it's the seer who is to investigate, but he doesn't specify that. So when investigating within the mind, who the seer is, Kandavan Indrada Nindradu Kandain. I saw Nindradu, what remained, Indrada, Kandavan Indrada, when the seer became non-existent. That is, when investigating within the mind to see who is the seer, I saw what remained when the seer thereby became non-existent. Some people who claim to be self-realized claim to see the disappearing of the I thought. But who is to see the disappearing of the I thought? The I thought is the seer, ego. Can ego see its own disappearance? No, it cannot. Can our real nature see the disappearance of ego? No, it cannot, because in the view of our real nature, there's no such thing as ego at all. So Bhagavan doesn't say, I saw the seer becoming non-existent. He said, I saw what remained when the seer became non-existent. Since the seer became non-existent, who is the I who saw what remained? It can only be what remained saw what remained. In other words, what we actually are always knows itself as it is. So when the seer disappears, we experience ourselves as that which always knows itself. So the wording is so subtle here, but if we think about it very carefully, there's so much implication and subtle meaning in the words Bhagavan uses. Then in the next, I've got to be really quick now. I'll go through. The next sentence he says, Kandavan Endrida Karutera Ville. The mind does not rise to say, I saw. Kandilan Endrida Karuteru Marin. In what way can the mind rise to say, I did not see? That is, since the mind doesn't rise to say, I saw, how can it rise to say, I didn't see? So whether I saw or I didn't see, there's no I to say either I saw or I didn't see. As he says in Uludunap, to say I have known myself or I have not known myself, both are grounds for ridicule. Because when we know ourselves as we actually are, there's no separate I there to say I have seen or I have not seen. And then he goes on to say, Vindidu vilakidu viruluruvona, vindile panduni vilakida endral. Who has the power to elucidate this by speaking when in ancient times you elucidated it without speaking? That implies when in ancient times, as Dakshinamurti, even you elucidated it without speaking. Elucidated it without speaking means elucidated it in silence. As Bhagavan said, the words can be pointers, but the truth can be revealed only by silence, because silence is itself the truth. Silence is our real nature. Silence is the very nature of being. That is, the silence of pure being alone can reveal the silence of pure being. And it can reveal it only to the silence of pure being. So we need to become Achala in order to see Arunachala as Achala, to see it as motionless. Vindidadu unnilai vilakida vendrai, vindalam Achalama vilakida nindrai. Only to elucidate your state without speaking, you stood as a hill shining from earth to sky. That is, only to elucidate your state of silent and motionless, pure being awareness without speaking. Without speaking means in silence, you stood as a hill. So Arunachala is ever teaching us through silence. Because our minds are so outward going, we're not able to understand the silent teaching of Arunachala. So it became necessary for Arunachala to appear in human form as Bhagavan Ramana, in order to give us the same, what he's eternally teaching in silence, Bhagavan has put it in words for us. Those words will turn our mind back within, where the silence will draw us within and make us see it as Achala, as itself. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Arunachala Ramanaya.